The knock came at 2:47 a.m., sharp and official, the kind that meant somebody wanted something you didn't have. Mira Kostova sat up in the back seat of the Honda Civic, her daughter's small body pressed against her ribs, both of them wrapped in a wool blanket that smelled like the laundromat's industrial detergent and broken promises. Through the fogged window, she could see the outline of a security guard, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness of the Planet Fitness parking lot. Third night this week. They were getting wise to her rotation. Mira rolled down the window exactly 2 inches. Cold October air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and asphalt. "Ma'am, you can't sleep here. Company policy." The guard was young, maybe 22, apologetic but firm. He'd probably been told to be nice, to avoid confrontation, to just make the problem go away without making it his problem. 5 minutes. "I just need to get my daughter situated." Mira's voice came out steadier than she felt, the accent she'd worked so hard to soften creeping back in exhaustion. Bulgarian vowels rounding her English. "I'm sorry. I have to ask you to leave now." Beside her, 6-year-old Sophia stirred, her dark eyes blinking open. She didn't ask questions anymore. She learned that questions made Mama's face do that thing where it looked like it might break. Mira started the engine. The Honda coughed twice before catching, the check engine light blazing orange on the dashboard alongside every other warning indicator that screamed, "You can't afford to fix me." She pulled out of the lot, headlights sweeping across the empty strip mall, and drove. She had $11.34 in her bank account. The gas tank showed an eighth remaining. Sophia needed breakfast. The car needed gas. Math didn't care about need. Math was a cold equation that always came up short. They ended up at the 24-hour diner on Route 9, the one with the flickering neon sign that read "By Joe's" because the G had died somewhere around 2003 and nobody had bothered to resurrect it. Mira parked under the streetlight, killed the engine, and pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked in a spiderweb pattern from when she dropped it 2 months ago. She couldn't afford to replace it, so she learned to navigate around the dead pixels and the way certain touches didn't register anymore. She opened her bank app. The balance hadn't magically increased. She opened her email. 17 new messages, 14 of them debt collectors with increasingly aggressive subject lines. 2 were job rejections. She was overqualified for retail, underqualified for management, and her 3-year gap in employment made her resume look like she'd been in witness protection. The third email made her breath catch. Subject: Estate Liquidation Auction, Commercial Properties, Steinway Springs, Pennsylvania. Mira almost deleted it. She'd signed up for these auction alerts months ago, back when she still believed that opportunity was something you could find if you just looked hard enough. Back when she thought hitting rock bottom meant you could only go up. But something made her open it. Maybe desperation. Maybe the fact that Sophia was sleeping in a car and deserved better. Maybe the universe sending a signal through a cracked phone screen at 3:17 a.m. in a diner parking lot. The email listed 12 properties being auctioned that morning at 10 a.m. storage units, abandoned shops, a defunct movie theater. And there, at the bottom of the list, lot number 9, Mineral Springs Bathhouse, 412 Gorman Street, Steinway Springs. Historic structure, circa 1924. Property sold ASIS. Condemned by County Health Department, 2019. Starting bid, $500. Mira stared at the listing. A bathhouse. She'd heard about them from her grandmother back in Sofia. Grand buildings where people came to take the mineral waters, to soak away their troubles in steam rooms and thermal pools. European tradition, old world luxury. In Pennsylvania coal country, it probably meant a rotting building with broken pipes and mold. But $500. She had $951.34 total if she cashed the check from her last warehouse shift. 3 weeks of overnight inventory work before the temp agency told her they'd filled the position with someone more reliable. The check was in the glove box, uncashed because once she deposited it, half would go to overdraft fees and the other half would vanish into the minimum payments that never made a dent. A building. A roof. For walls. It didn't matter if it was condemned. It was shelter. More than that, it was hers. Not a landlord who could evict her. Not a parking lot security guard who could chase her off. Hers. Sophia stirred, rubbing her eyes. "Mama, I'm hungry." Mira made a decision that was either the bravest or stupidest thing she'd ever done. She couldn't tell which, and that felt appropriate. "I know, Zlato. I know. We're going on an adventure." The Steinway Springs Community Center occupied a building that looked like it had been designed by someone who confused civic pride with aggressive geometry. Gray concrete, small windows, the architectural equivalent of a sigh. Inside, the auction room smelled like instant coffee and poor life choices. 40 people sat in folding chairs facing a makeshift podium, most of them professional vultures, flippers looking for underpriced real estate, scrappers hoping for easy salvage. A few were clearly desperate, like Mira, holding auction paddles with the white-knuckled grip of people betting their last chips. Sophia sat in the plastic chair next to her mother, swinging her legs, clutching a coloring book Mira had grabbed from the dollar store. They'd cashed the check at the check-cashing place that took 3% as tribute. Mira now had $922.80 in cash tucked into her jacket pocket. She'd used $28.20 on gas, the coloring book, and a box of granola bars that would serve as meals until this gamble paid off or destroyed them. The auctioneer was a man in his 50s with the weary energy of someone who'd seen 1,000 bad decisions and knew he'd see 1,000 more. His voice carried the practiced rhythm of someone who could make buying garbage sound like winning the lottery. Lot 7, commercial storefront, 1,800 square feet, water damage throughout. Opening bid, $2,000. The bidding went fast. Mira watched people raise their paddles with casual confidence. Money they could afford to lose. Sold for $3,500 to bidder 14. They moved through the lots methodically. Storage units went for hundreds. The defunct theater went for $12,000 to a developer who probably saw condos in his future. Then Lot 9, Mineral Springs Bathhouse for $12, Gorman Street. The auctioneer's tone shifted slightly, taking on the careful neutrality of someone describing a crime scene. Historic structure, circa 1924. Approximately 8,000 square feet across 3 floors. Property has been condemned by the county health department due to structural concerns and code violations. Sold as is, no inspections, no warranties. Buyer assumes all liability and repair costs. City requires immediate proof of insurance and safety remediation plan within 30 days or property reverts to municipal ownership. A photograph appeared on the projector screen behind him. Mira's breath caught. The building was beautiful in the way abandoned things sometimes are. 3 stories of red brick, arched windows with most of the glass still intact, decorative stonework around the entrance that spoke of an era when people built things to last. The front facade bore faded letters. Mineral Springs Bathhouse, EST 1924. But the beauty was dying. Ivy crawled up the walls like aggressive cancer. The roof sagged in the middle. Several windows were boarded over. Yellow condemnation notices were visible even in the photograph, plastered across the front door like warning labels. Structure was originally built over natural hot springs, the auctioneer continued. Springs still active but unsealed and potentially hazardous. Building includes original steam rooms, thermal pools, and underground spring access. Again, property sold ASDS. Opening bid, $500. Silence. Nobody moved. Mira could hear the clock on the wall ticking, loud in the quiet room. $500, the auctioneer repeated, his voice carrying a hint of desperation now. Folks, this is an 8,000 square foot historic building. Someone give me 500. More silence. People shifted in their seats, but no paddles went up. Buying a condemned building over an active hot spring wasn't an investment. It was a liability wrapped in insurance nightmares and structural engineering costs. Sophia tugged on Mira's sleeve. Mama, the picture looks like a castle. It did. A crumbling castle, but a castle nonetheless. Mira raised her paddle. The auctioneer's relief was visible. 500. Thank you, bidder 23. Do I hear 550? Nobody bid. The room remained silent, all eyes turning to look at the crazy woman willing to buy a condemned building. 500 going once. The auctioneer scanned the room. Going twice. He paused, giving the universe one last chance to save Mira from herself. Sold to bidder 23 for $500. The gavel came down with a sound like finality, like a door closing, like the universe saying, "Okay then, let's see what you do with this." 3 people approached Mira before she made out of the building. The first was a man in an expensive jacket who smelled like cologne that cost more than her car. "That was a mistake," he said without preamble. "I'm a contractor. That building needs at least $200,000 in repairs before it's habitable. Sell it to me now for $800. Save yourself the trouble." Mira kept walking, Sophia's hand in hers. The second was a woman in her 60s, well-dressed, with the sharp eyes of someone who made money by knowing things others didn't. "Sweetheart, do you have any idea what you just bought? That property has foundation issues. The springs beneath are unsealed, and the city will fine you thousands if you don't remediate within 30 days. Let me take it off your hands. 1,000 cash right now." Mira pushed through the door into the October morning, cold air hitting her face. The third was the auctioneer himself, catching her in the parking lot. "Ma'am, I have to ask, do you have the capital to repair that property? Because if you default on the safety requirements, you lose the building and you're still liable for any damages or injuries." Mira turned to face him. She was 34 years old, had been in America for 12 years, had a master's degree in chemistry from Sophia University that nobody here seemed to value, and was currently living in her car with her daughter. She had exactly $422.80 left after paying the $500 purchase price. "I'll figure it out." "Ma'am," I said, "I'll figure it out." She buckled Sophia into the back seat, started the Honda, and drove toward Gorman Street with no plan, no money, and no idea what she was doing. The only thing she had was the title to a condemned building and the feeling that sometimes the only way forward was through. Steinway Springs had been a town of 20,000 people in 1950. It was a town of 4,000 now, the kind of place that had peaked during the coal boom and had been slowly dissolving ever since, buildings emptying like water draining from a tub. Gorman Street sat in what had once been the downtown district. Most of the buildings were vacant, windows dark, for lease signs faded by years of sun. A pharmacy that looked like it was operating on spite and prescription transfers. A coffee shop called Grounds for Divorce that had a handwritten sign reading "closed until further notice" hanging in the window. And there, at the end of the block, the bathhouse. Mira pulled up to the curb and killed the engine. For a long moment, she just stared. The photograph had done a disservice. In person, the building had a strange dignity despite its decay. 3 stories of red brick, darker than they'd appeared in the photo, almost burgundy where the morning sun hit them. The arched windows on the first floor were tall, designed to let in maximum light. The stonework around the entrance was ornate, carved leaves and vines, Art Nouveau style, the kind of craftsmanship nobody bothered with anymore. But the decay was real. The roof had several visible holes. The ivy had worked its way into the mortar, prying bricks loose. The front steps were cracked, one completely broken in half. The condemnation notices covered the front door like aggressive yellow wallpaper. Sophia pressed her face against the car window. "It's big." "Yes." "Is this our new house?" Myra's throat tightened. "We'll see, baby." She got out of the car, Sophia following, and walked up to the front entrance. The door was chained shut, padlocked, condemned, and no entry stenciled across it in red. Mira walked around the side of the building. An alley ran along the east side, narrow, filled with weeds growing through broken pavement. She followed it to the back. The rear entrance was less formal, a simple metal door also chained, but the frame around it had rotted. She pushed, and the whole thing shifted. Not much, but enough to tell her the wood was soft, compromised. She looked at Sophia. "Stay right here. Don't move." "Mama." "Right here, Sophia. I mean it." Mira examined the door frame. The wood was swollen from moisture, the screws holding the hinges barely catching anymore. She pushed harder, throwing her weight against it. The frame splintered. The door swung inward with a groan of protesting metal. Darkness. A smell rushed out. Mineral water, mildew, something else she couldn't place. Not decay exactly, but age. the smell of a place that had been holding its breath for 5 years. Mira pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight function. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a hallway tiled in small hexagonal tiles that had once been white but were now gray with grime and water stains. She stepped inside. The first room she found was large, maybe 30 by 40 feet, with a ceiling that soared 20 feet high. Cathedral-style windows, most of the glass still intact, but so dirty they barely let in light. The floor was the same hexagonal tile, with a large rectangular depression in the center. A pool, drained now, its tile cracked and stained. Around the pool's edge, wooden benches sat in various states of collapse. One wall held a series of small changing rooms, their curtains long gone, the rods rusted. Everything was covered in dust and leaf that had blown in through broken windows. But underneath the decay, Mira could see the bones of what this place had been. The tile work was intricate. The windows, when clean, would fill the room with natural light. The ceiling had decorative plasterwork, geometric patterns that spoke to the Art Deco era. She walked further in. Her footsteps echoed in the empty space. The sound was strange, almost musical, like the building was responding to her presence. A staircase led to the second floor. The banister was oak, solid despite years of neglect. She climbed carefully, testing each step. The second floor held individual treatment rooms, small spaces that had once contained massage tables or private soaking tubs. Most were empty now, stripped bare. But the walls were good, plaster over brick, still solid despite some water damage. At the end of the hallway, a larger door. Mira pushed it open. The steam room. It was smaller than she expected, maybe 15 by 20 feet. The walls were tiled in dark blue ceramic that had probably been beautiful once. In the center of the room, a circular depression in the floor, maybe 6 feet in diameter, deep like a small pool. And rising from it, visible in the beam of her phone's flashlight, was steam. Mira stepped closer, her heart beating faster. The depression was filled with water, dark and still, and yes, definitely steam rising from its surface. The water was warm. The springs were still active. She knelt at the edge, careful not to get too close. The water was clear near the surface, but the bottom disappeared into darkness. How deep did it go? 10 feet? 20? As she watched, more steam rose, curling in the beam of her flashlight, and for just a second, Mira blinked. Her eyes were playing tricks. The steam had seemed to form a pattern, something that looked almost like letters. She shook her head. Exhaustion. Stress. She was seeing things. Steam didn't form letters. Steam was random, chaotic, just water vapor rising and dispersing. But as she watched, it happened again. The steam curled, twisted, and for one clear second formed what looked like a word. Wait. Then it dispersed, becoming random again. Mira stood up, so fast she almost fell backward. Her phone clattered to the tile floor, the flashlight beam spinning wildly before settling on the ceiling. She picked it up with shaking hands. The steam was just steam now, rising normally, dissipating normally. She was tired. She hadn't slept properly in weeks. She was seeing things that weren't there because her brain was running on empty and her body was on fumes. Mama! Sophia's voice, frightened from outside. Mira ran. She bolted from the steam room, down the stairs, through the main bath hall, back to the rear entrance where her daughter stood, eyes wide. Baby, what's wrong? A man was here. He was looking at our car. I told him you were inside, and he left, but Mama... He looked mean. Mira pulled Sophia against her chest, scanning the alley. Empty now, but she could see fresh tire tracks in the dirt, someone who'd pulled up, stopped, then driven away. She looked at the building, at the broken door hanging open, at the darkness inside. They couldn't stay here. Not tonight. The building had no electricity, no heat, no water except what was bubbling up from underground. And now someone knew she was here, knew the building was occupied. Come on. We're leaving. Where are we going? Good question. The car had maybe an eighth tank of gas left. She had $422.80. No job. No prospects. A condemned building that needed hundreds of thousands of dollars in repairs. She had made a mistake. A terrible, expensive mistake. She should have taken the contractor's offer in the parking lot, sold it for $800, walked away with a small loss instead of total ruin. They drove to the public library. It was warm. It was safe. It had bathrooms and water fountains and Wi-Fi. Sophia could color. Mira could figure out what to do next. She set Sophia up at a table in the children's section with her coloring book and crayons, then took a seat at one of the computer terminals. First, she searched Mineral Springs Bathhouse, Steinway Springs, Pennsylvania history. The results were sparse. A few historical society pages, some old newspaper clippings that had been digitized. The bathhouse had been built in 1924 by a man named Teodor Kovac, an immigrant from Croatia who discovered the hot springs while working in the nearby coal mines. He'd pooled money from the immigrant community, Croatians, Poles, Italians, Bulgarians, and built the bathhouse as a community space. For 40 years, it had been the social center of Steinway Springs' immigrant population. Kovac had died in 1964. His son had run the place until 1985, when changing times and declining population made it unprofitable. It had limped along under various owners until 2019, when the last owner died and the county condemned it for code violations. Nothing about steam that formed words. Nothing about anything unusual except the springs themselves. Mira searched Natural Hot Springs, Pennsylvania. Dozens of results. Pennsylvania had numerous natural hot springs, geological formations where groundwater was heated by the Earth's core and rose to the surface. They were rare, but not unheard of. Most have been commercialized or capped off. She searched property insurance condemned building. Her stomach sank as she read. Insuring a condemned building was nearly impossible. The few companies that would do it charged premiums so high they were essentially saying go away. She searched condemned building rehabilitation requirements, Pennsylvania. Her stomach sank further. The building would need a licensed structural engineer's assessment. Immediate repairs to make it safe, even if not fully restored. Proof of insurance. All within 30 days, or the property reverted to the city, and she'd be liable for any costs they incurred securing it. Minimum cost for just the assessment and basic safety work, $15,000. Mira had $422.80. She closed her eyes, resting her head in her hands. The library was warm. Sophia was safe, coloring peacefully. And Mira had just destroyed their last chance at stability by buying a building she couldn't afford to fix and couldn't afford to walk away from. Someone sat down in the chair next to her. Mira looked up. An elderly woman, maybe 75, wearing a hand-knit cardigan and carrying a canvas bag full of library books. Her face was deeply lined, the kind of weathered that came from a hard life fully lived, and her eyes were sharp, missing nothing. You bought Teodor's place. It wasn't a question. Small town. Word traveled fast. I did. Foolish. I'm aware. The woman studied her for a long moment. You're not from here. Bulgaria originally. I've been in America 12 years. Your daughter? Sophia. She's 6. The woman nodded slowly, processing information. I'm Vera Kovac. Teodor was my uncle. That bathhouse is my family's legacy, even if it's been rotting for 20 years. Mira didn't know what to say. I'm sorry for your loss. Don't be sorry. Be smart. Vera pulled a folded piece of paper from her bag. The building inspector who condemned it? My nephew. Good man, honest, but he knows that place better than anyone. He can tell you exactly what needs fixing first and what can wait. She slid the paper across. A name and phone number. Why are you helping me? Because you bought it. Could have walked away when those vultures offered you double at the auction. Could have flipped it for profit. But you came to see it. That means something. Vera stood, gathering her bag. Also, you have that look. What look? Desperate enough to be dangerous. Dangerous people get things done. She walked away, then paused, looking back. One more thing. Teodor used to say the springs had a spirit. Old country superstition, probably. But he swore the steam showed him things sometimes. His wife thought he was senile. What kind of things? Words. Messages. Teodor said the springs were trying to communicate. Personally, I think he was drinking his own mineral water and getting delusions. But she shrugged. Old buildings have old stories. Who knows what's true? She left. Mira stared at the phone number, at the name. Peter Kovac, licensed structural engineer. The steam. The word she'd seen. Wait. Except she hadn't seen it. She'd imagined it. Stress. Exhaustion. The human brain was excellent at finding patterns where none existed. Wasn't it? She looked at Sophia, coloring peacefully, and made another decision. They were going back to the bathhouse. Tonight, when it was dark and quiet, and she was going to sit in that steam room and watch the vapor, and either she'd see words again or she'd confirm she was losing her mind. Either way, she needed to know. They ate dinner at a soup kitchen called Mercy Table, run by a Lutheran church that didn't ask questions. Chicken noodle soup, white bread, apple slices. Sophia ate everything. Mira forced down half a bowl, her stomach too tight with anxiety to accept more. At 8 p.m., when true darkness had fallen and Steinway Springs had gone quiet, Mira drove back to Gorman Street. The bathhouse looked different at night. The streetlights cast long shadows that made the broken windows look like eye sockets in a skull. The ivy seemed to move in the wind, writhing against the brick. Mira parked in the alley behind the building. She stopped at a dollar store and bought LED camping lanterns, 3 of them for $15. She grabbed them, along with 2 sleeping bags she'd kept in the trunk, relics from when she'd briefly tried camping before realizing she couldn't afford campground fees. Are we sleeping here? Sophia's voice was small, uncertain. Just for tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure something else out. Lies. She had nowhere else to go. But Sophia didn't need to know that yet. They went through the rear entrance Mira had broken open. She hung the lanterns on hooks that were still bolted to the wall, probably used for coat storage decades ago. The LED light filled the space, harsh and white, making the decay more visible but also less threatening. The main bath hall looked almost peaceful in the steady glow. Mira spread the sleeping bags on the floor in the driest corner, away from obvious water stains and collapsed ceiling sections. Sophia sat down, wrapping herself in her sleeping bag. Tell me a story, Mama. Mira's mind was elsewhere, but she forced herself to focus. Sophia needed normalcy. Routine. The illusion that everything was okay. What story? About Baba. About when she was young. Mira settled beside her daughter, pulling her close. Your Baba grew up in the mountains of Bulgaria, in a village so small it doesn't have a name on maps. She told the story her mother had told her about growing up in rural Bulgaria in the 1960s, about the old traditions, about mineral springs in the mountains where people believed the water could heal. Sophia fell asleep halfway through, her breathing deepening, her small body relaxing. Mira carefully laid her down, tucked the sleeping bag around her, and stared at the ceiling. 10 p.m. The building creaked, wood expanding and contracting with temperature changes. Wind whistled through broken windows. Normal sounds. Old building sounds. 11 p.m. Mira's phone battery was at 23%. She'd have to charge it in the car tomorrow, running the engine, burning precious gas. 11:30 p.m. She made a decision. She stood, grabbed one of the lanterns, and walked toward the staircase. The second floor was darker, the LED light creating harsh shadows. She walked slowly, listening to every creak, every whisper of wind. The steam room door was closed. She didn't remember closing it. Had she closed it, or had it drifted shut on its own? She pushed it open. The hinges screamed, the sound echoing through the empty building. The room was full of steam. More than this afternoon. It poured from the central depression in thick billows, filling the space like fog. Mira stepped inside, closing the door behind her. The temperature was warmer here, noticeably so. The springs were definitely active, hot water rising from deep underground, heated by geothermal activity. She set the lantern down on the tile floor. Its light diffused through the steam, creating a strange glow. She sat cross-legged in front of the water, watching. For 5 minutes, nothing. Just steam, rising and dispersing. Random patterns. Chaos. Then her watch hit midnight, and the steam changed. It began to spiral, the vapor moving in organized streams instead of random dispersal. Mira's heart rate kicked up. She watched, barely breathing. The streams wove together, forming shapes. Letters. Clear, unmistakable letters. You came back. Myra's entire body went cold despite the warm air. The words hung in the steam for 3 full seconds before dispersing. Then more formed. The house remembers. Dispersed. Do not leave. Dispersed. Mira scrambled backward, her back hitting the tile wall. This wasn't stress. This wasn't her imagination. The steam was forming words. Actual, readable words. She grabbed the lantern with shaking hands, ready to run, ready to get Sophia and drive away and never come back. Let the city take the building, let it rot. The steam reformed. Please. Just that one word. And something about it made Mira stop. The way it formed, slowly, carefully. It didn't feel threatening. It felt pleading. Who are you? Her voice came out as a whisper. The steam swirled. Formed. Teodor. Teodor. Teodor Kovac. The man who built this place. You're dead. You died in 1964. Yes. Why are you here? The steam seemed to struggle, reforming several times before settling on. Unfinished. What's unfinished? Promise. Hidden. Must protect. The words came faster now, one after another. They will come. They want it. Must not find. Want what? Who's coming? The steam dispersed completely. For a moment, nothing. Then, slowly, one final word formed. Tomorrow. And the steam went back to normal, rising and dispersing randomly, as if nothing had happened. Mira sat against the wall, her mind racing. This was impossible. Ghosts weren't real. Buildings didn't communicate. There was a rational explanation, some kind of geothermal vent that created air currents, combined with pareidolia, her brain finding patterns in randomness. Except the words had been clear, specific, responsive. She stayed in the steam room for another hour, watching, waiting for more words to form. Nothing happened. At 1:30 a.m., exhausted and confused, she returned to the main hall, where Sophia slept peacefully. Mira lay down in her own sleeping bag, but couldn't sleep. Her mind churned through possibilities, each more impossible than the last. Tomorrow. The steam had said tomorrow. Someone was coming tomorrow. Who? Why? She must have dozed off eventually, because she jerked awake to the sound of voices outside the building. Daylight filtered through the dirty windows. Her phone showed 9:42 a.m. Sophia was still asleep, curled in her sleeping bag. The voices grew louder. Multiple people. Then a banging on the front door. Mira stood quietly, moving to one of the large windows. She looked out. 3 vehicles parked on the street. A black Lexus SUV. A white van with Ridgefield Development Corp. emblazoned on the side. And a Steinway Springs police cruiser. Her stomach dropped. She'd been caught trespassing in a condemned building. They were going to arrest her. They were going to take Sophia. Unless this was what the steam had warned her about. They will come. They want it. The banging came again, harder. A voice called through the door. Building inspector, open up. We know someone's inside. Mira took a deep breath. She couldn't run. She had nowhere to go. She was going to have to face this. She walked to the front entrance, the chain still securing it from the outside. She called through the door. I'm the owner. I have the title. Give me a minute to come around back. Footsteps retreating. Voices murmuring. Mira woke Sophia gently. Baby, we have visitors. Stay close to me, okay? Sophia nodded, rubbing sleep from her eyes. They walked to the rear entrance. 3 people waited in the alley. A man in a suit, early 40s, expensive haircut. A woman in her 50s wearing business casual and holding a clipboard. And a police officer who looked bored. The man stepped forward. I'm Richard Hartwell, Ridgefield Development Corporation. This building is condemned. You can't be in here. Mira pulled the title from her jacket pocket, unfolding it. I own this building. I bought it yesterday at county auction. Hartwell's face went through several expressions: surprise, annoyance, anger. That was a mistake on your part. We're prepared to offer you $1,500 to rescind the sale. Not interested. Ma'am. The woman with the clipboard stepped forward. I'm County Health Inspector Linda Torres. This building has been condemned for safety violations. If you don't have immediate proof of insurance and a remediation plan, I'm authorized to have you forcibly removed and the property seized. Myra's mouth went dry. I just bought it yesterday. I haven't had time. The law doesn't care about your timeline. Hartwell smiled, shark-like. $1,500. Take it. Walk away. Save yourself a world of trouble. Why do you want it? Mira heard herself ask. It's a condemned wreck. You said so yourself. The land. Location. We're planning a development project. This property happens to be right where we need it. He pulled out a checkbook. $1,500. Right now. Cash it today. In her jacket pocket, Mira had $407.80. They hadn't eaten breakfast yet. The car needed gas. She had no job prospects, no home, no safety net. $1,500 would buy time, would let her breathe, would let her find something stable for Sophia. She looked at her daughter, standing in the alley of a condemned building, wearing clothes from the donation bin, holding a coloring book that was almost full because they couldn't afford a new one. She thought about the steam, about words appearing at midnight, about a dead man's message. They will come. They want it. Must not find. What were they after? What was hidden here? No. The word came out stronger than she felt. This is my building. I'm not selling. Hartwell's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. He turned to Inspector Torres. Do your job. Condemn it properly. Get her out. Torres looked uncomfortable. Sir, she does own the title. I need to follow proper procedure. Then follow it. But get her out of this building today. You didn't. The Pynite Cavern is still there, sealed behind the original spring access. To reach it, you must enter the spring pool in the steam room. At the bottom, perhaps 12 feet down, there's an opening in the rock. The spring water flows through it, but a person can swim through if they are brave. Beyond that opening is a short underwater passage, maybe 15 feet, that opens into the air-filled cavern. The crystals are there, millions of dollars worth. Perhaps more now. I understand Pynite has become even rarer, but I ask you to consider, do you need it? This bathhouse was built with sacrifice. It served this community for 40 years. If you take the crystals and leave, you will be rich, but you will have destroyed something irreplaceable. If you restore the bathhouse, reopen it, serve the community as I did, you will have something worth more than crystals. The choice is yours. I have hidden it for 50 years. I can hide it a few more. Choose wisely. Teodor Kovac. Mira read the letter 3 times, her mind spinning. Pynite. She'd studied mineralogy briefly in her chemistry coursework. Pynite was phenomenally rare. At one point in the 1950s, it had been the rarest mineral on Earth. Synthetic versions existed now, but natural Pynite specimens sold for tens of thousands of dollars per carat. Tons of it. That's what Teodor had written. Tons. Her hands were shaking. She carefully folded the letter and tucked it into her jacket pocket. This was what Hartwell wanted. Somehow, Ridgefield Development had learned about the Pynite. Maybe through geological surveys, maybe through rumors, maybe through research into the property's history. They wanted the land not for development. They wanted the mineral deposit. And they'd been willing to let Mira buy the property because they assumed she'd fail to meet the remediation requirements. The building would revert to the city, and they could swoop in with a proper bid backed by capital and lawyers. She climbed back through the hole in the wall. Sophia was waiting, eyes wide. Did you find treasure? Mira knelt down, taking her daughter's hands. Baby, I need to tell you something important. We found something very valuable, but we can't tell anyone yet. Can you keep a secret? Sophia nodded solemnly. Like a spy. Exactly like a spy. Myra's phone showed 2:47 p.m. Inspector Torres had said end of day. That probably meant 5 p.m. when business hours ended. She had 2 hours. She needed to do 3 things. First, verify the Pynite was really there. Second, find a way to protect her claim to the property. Third, figure out what the hell to do with a fortune in rare crystals at the bottom of a condemned building's hot spring. But first, Sophia needed food. There was a small grocery store 3 blocks away, the kind that survived in dying towns through sheer obstinate refusal to close. They drove there in the Honda. Mira bought a roasted chicken from the deli counter, a loaf of bread, a gallon of water, apples, and cheese. Total, $18.50. That left her with $389.30. They ate in the car, devouring the food with the intensity of people who'd been running on empty. Sophia actually smiled, chicken grease on her face. This is good, Mama. I know, baby. Myra's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Kostova? This is Peter Kovac, the structural engineer. Vera's nephew. I heard you bought the bathhouse. Mayan called me. She said you might need help. I can't afford to pay you. I'm not asking for payment. Not yet, anyway. Look, that building is part of my family history. If you're serious about restoring it, I want to help. At minimum, I can do a basic assessment, tell you what's critical and what can wait. Mira made a decision. Can you come now? Give me 30 minutes. They drove back to the bathhouse. Mira parked in the alley, and they went inside, back to the main hall that was becoming familiar now, less threatening. Peter Kovac arrived exactly 30 minutes later. He was 45, tall, with the weathered look of someone who spent time on construction sites. He carried a heavy toolbox and a tablet computer. He looked around the main hall, his expression unreadable. I haven't been in here since I was a kid. My dad used to bring me. We'd swim in the pool, sit in the steam room. It was magic. Your aunt mentioned that Theodore was your great-uncle. Yeah, he died when I was 2, but my dad told stories. Peter set down his toolbox and pulled out a moisture meter. Let me do a walkthrough. The big concerns are structural integrity, water damage, and code violations. Realistically, you're looking at major costs. Hartwell walked back to his Lexus, got in, and drove away. The white van followed. The police officer gave Mira a sympathetic look and retreated to his cruiser. Torres sighed. Look, Ms. Kostova. Mira Kostova. Ms. Kostova, I need you out of this building by end of day. It's not safe. I'll start the formal inspection process, but until you have proper documentation showing it's been made safe, you can't occupy it. Understood. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem. I'm sorry, but that's not my problem. Torres walked back to her county vehicle. Mira stood in the alley, holding Sophia's hand, watching them all drive away. She had until end of day, maybe 12 hours. And somewhere in this building, hidden by a dead man's ghost, was something valuable enough that a development company was willing to push her out to get it. She looked down at Sophia. How do you feel about a treasure hunt? Sophia's eyes lit up. Really? They were going to search every inch of this building, and they were going to find whatever Theodore Kovac had hidden, before anyone else did. The first rule of searching a building you don't understand is to create a map. Mira learned this during her brief stint as a warehouse inventory supervisor, before the plant closed, before the eviction, before everything fell apart. She tore pages from Sophia's coloring book, the ones already finished, and used a pen from her purse to sketch a rough floor plan. The main bath hall, the changing rooms, the treatment rooms upstairs, the steam room. She numbered each space, creating a systematic grid. We're going to check every room, she told Sophia. Look for anything unusual. Loose floorboards, weird marks on walls, anything that looks like it doesn't belong. Like pirates looking for treasure? Exactly like that. It started on the first floor. The main bath hall yielded nothing. Empty pool, rotting benches, water-stained tile. The changing rooms were stripped bare, just wooden frames and rusted curtain rods. A supply closet in the northwest corner held decades of accumulated debris. Broken mops, empty cleaning supply bottles, a stack of towels so mildewed they'd petrified into something resembling cardboard. Mira shifted through it methodically, finding nothing. By noon, they'd covered the entire first floor. Nothing. Myra's stomach growled. Sophia had eaten the last granola bar an hour ago. Mama, I'm hungry. I know, baby. Soon. They had $407.80. She needed to save gas money, but Sophia needed to eat. Stay right here. I'm going to check something. Mira walked through the main hall to a door she'd noticed yesterday, but hadn't opened. It was smaller than the others, painted the same dingy white as the walls, easy to overlook. She turned the handle. Locked, but the door was old, the wood swollen with moisture. She threw her shoulder against it. The lock gave way with a splintering crack, and the door swung inward, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Basement. Mira grabbed a lantern, called to Sophia, "Stay in the main hall where I can see you," and descended carefully, testing each step. The air grew cooler as she went down. Not cold, but noticeably less humid than the upper floors. The stairs ended in a large room, maybe 40 by 60 feet, with a low ceiling supported by brick pillars. The lantern light revealed a space that had clearly been used for storage. Metal shelving units lined the walls, most of them empty or holding only debris. Old pipes ran along the ceiling, some leaking rust-colored water that had stained the concrete floor. But in the far corner, something caught her attention. A wooden door, smaller than the others, set low in the wall like it led to a crawl space. Mira crossed the basement, her footsteps echoing. She knelt in front of the small door. No handle, just a simple latch. She lifted it. The door swung open, revealing a narrow tunnel. Brick-lined, maybe 4 feet high, extending into darkness beyond the reach of her lantern. The mineral smell was stronger here. She could hear water moving, a gentle rushing sound. The hot springs. This tunnel led to the spring source. Mira hesitated. The tunnel looked stable, but it was narrow, dark, and went who knew where. If it collapsed? Mama, Sophia's voice from the top of the stairs, worried. I'm okay, baby. Stay there. Mira made a decision. Not now. She'd explore the tunnel later, when she had better light and time. For now, she needed to keep searching the accessible areas. She climbed back upstairs, securing the basement door behind her. Sophia was sitting on one of the rotting benches, swinging her legs. Did you find treasure? Not yet, but I found where the hot water comes from. There's a tunnel down there. They moved to the second floor. The treatment rooms were small, most completely empty. But in the fifth room, Mira found something interesting, a section of wall where the plaster was different, slightly raised like it had been patched over. She pressed against it. Hollow sound. Something behind this wall. She looked around for a tool, found a piece of broken metal shelving in the hallway, and used it to pry at the plaster. The material was old, crumbling easily. Large chunks fell away, revealing brick underneath. But it wasn't the same brick as the rest of the building. This was newer, different color, clearly added later. A sealed doorway. Someone had bricked up a door. Mira attacked the mortar with a metal rod, working it between the bricks. The mortar was old, but had been skillfully applied. It took 20 minutes of hard work before she managed to loosen the first brick. She pulled it free. Behind it, darkness. A space. She worked faster, removing brick after brick, until she'd created an opening large enough to see through. She shined her phone's flashlight into the gap. A room. Small, maybe 10 by 10 feet. Empty except for a wooden desk pushed against the far wall, and on that desk, barely visible in the flashlight beam, what looked like papers. Sophia, stay back. Mira widened the hole until she could squeeze through. She climbed into the sealed room, dust rising in clouds around her. The air was stale but dry. This room had been sealed for years, protected from the moisture that plagued the rest of the building. The desk was old, probably original to the building. Its surface was covered in papers held down by a glass paperweight. Mira lifted it carefully. Ledgers. Financial records. Dated 1962, 1963, 1964. She flipped through pages, seeing careful entries in neat handwriting. Income from bath fees, expenses for coal and supplies, wages paid to workers. Standard bookkeeping. Then, tucked between 2 ledger pages, she found an envelope. Unsealed. Inside, a single sheet of paper, handwritten in the same neat script as the ledgers. The letter was dated March 3rd, 1964, addressed to whoever finds this. Myra's hands trembled as she read. My name is Teodor Kovac. I am dying. Cancer, the doctors say, from years of working in the mines before I built this place. I have perhaps 3 months. My son Mikhail will inherit the bathhouse, but he does not know what I am about to write here. When I discovered these springs in 1923, I was a coal miner making 30 cents a day. I had nothing. The springs were on land owned by the Steinway Mining Company, but they did not care about hot water bubbling from ground. They cared about coal. I worked for 2 years, saving every penny, and bought this plot. 1 acre of surface rights, worthless to the mining company, but everything to me. I built this bathhouse with money pooled from the immigrant community. Croatians, Bulgarians, Poles, Italians. We were all poor. We all believed in the healing power of mineral water. But the springs held more than water. In 1925, while excavating to deepen the spring access, my workers broke through into a natural cavern. Inside that cavern, we found a deposit of something I had never seen before. Crystals, large formations, growing from the cave walls, fed by the same geothermal activity that heated the springs. I took samples to a geologist at the university. He nearly fainted. Pienite, one of the rarest minerals on Earth. At that time, only 5 specimens had ever been found. My cave held tons of it. The geologist wanted to publish. I told him no. I told him the samples came from Montana, but gave no specific location. I took them back and sealed the cave entrance. I told no one, not even my wife. Why? Because I knew what would happen. The mining company would claim mineral rights. The government would confiscate. Wealthy men would arrive with lawyers and documents. My little bathhouse, built with community sacrifice, would be destroyed. So I kept the secret. I continued running the bathhouse. The springs remained open, the steam room accessible, but I sealed off the entrance to the crystal cavern. Only I knew it existed. The wealth from those crystals could have made me rich. I chose to die poor. Why? Because this place was never about money. It was about community, about immigrants building something together, about hot water and fellowship, about being part of something larger than ourselves. I am leaving this letter for whoever buys this building if it ever falls into disrepair after my death. If you're reading this, you probably bought it for very little. You probably think you made a mistake. How major? Honestly, probably $200,000 minimum to make it properly habitable and up to code. But he paused, testing the walls with his moisture meter. If we focus on making it structurally sound first, getting the immediate safety issues fixed, that's maybe $25,000 to $30,000. That would satisfy the county enough to give you time to do the rest gradually. I have $389. Peter looked at her. Then we have a problem. Because even if I donate my time, materials cost money. Permits cost money. Insurance costs money. I know. He continued his assessment, moving through the building methodically. Mira watched, her mind working through possibilities. She had pienite worth millions hidden in the basement. But she couldn't exactly walk into a bank and say, "Give me a loan secured by rare crystals I can't legally extract yet." After an hour, Peter returned to the main hall. Okay, the good news. The structure is more sound than I expected. The brick walls are solid. The foundation is good. The roof needs work, but it's not actively collapsing. And the bad news? The bad news is that without immediate action, the county will seize it. You need proof of insurance by Friday. That's 3 days. Insuring a condemned building is nearly impossible without showing you've begun remediation. Mira felt the walls closing in. Is there any way? There might be one option. Peter pulled up something on his tablet. There's a state historic preservation grant program. Buildings over 100 years old that are historically significant can qualify for emergency stabilization funding. This building would qualify. The grant wouldn't cover everything, but it might cover enough to satisfy the county and get you insurance. How long does the application take? Normally, 6 months. Myra's heart sank. But Peter continued, there's an emergency provision. If a building is in immediate danger of being lost, they can fast-track approval in as little as 72 hours. You'd need documentation proving historical significance and immediate threat. Do we have that? The building is 101 years old. It's the last remaining immigrant bathhouse in this region. That's historically significant. As for immediate threat, he gestured around at the water damage and structural issues. I think we can make that case. Then let's do it. Peter pulled up the application on his tablet. For the next 2 hours, they worked together, Mira providing information while Peter photographed damage and filled out technical sections. At 6:30 p.m., they submitted the application electronically. Peter looked at his watch. That's all we can do tonight. The review committee meets Thursday morning. If they approve emergency status, funding could be released by Friday. If they don't, then you lose the building. After Peter left, Mira and Sophia were alone again. The sun had set. The building was dark except for their LED lanterns. Inspector Torres hadn't returned to forcibly evict them, which meant either she'd forgotten or had decided to give Mira until morning. Sophia was tired, yawning, ready for sleep. But Myra's mind was wired, racing. She needed to verify the pie-night was real. She needed to see it with her own eyes. "Baby, let's get you settled for bed." She made up the sleeping bags again in the same corner of the main hall, the driest and safest spot. Sophia crawled in, already half asleep. "Mama, will we live here? Like, for real?" "I hope so, baby. I really hope so. I like it here. It feels like the building is friendly." Mira thought about the steam messages, about Theodore's spirit, or whatever it was, trying to communicate, about the way the building seemed to respond to presence. "Yeah, I think it is friendly." Sophia fell asleep within minutes. Mira waited, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall, making sure she was truly deep asleep. Then she grabbed a lantern and went to the steam room. It was 10:45 p.m. The steam room was full of vapor, the water in the central depression churning gently, fed by the hot spring below. Mira sat on the tile edge, staring into the dark water. Theodore's letter had been clear: 12 feet down, an opening in the rock, an underwater passage leading to the crystal cavern. She'd been on her high school swim team back in Bulgaria. She was comfortable underwater, but swimming down into a hot spring in a condemned building at night, alone, was objectively insane. If she got trapped, if the passage was blocked, if the cavern had collapsed, nobody would find her body for days. Sophia would wake up alone in an abandoned building. But if the pie night was there, if it was real, it changed everything. It meant options. It meant she could afford to save this building, could afford to give Sophia a home, could afford to stop running. Mira made her decision. She stripped down to her underwear and sports bra, set her phone on the tile with a timer set for 10 minutes. If she wasn't back by then, the alarm would wake Sophia, and her daughter would at least know something was wrong. She sat on the edge of the pool, dangling her legs in. The water was hot, not quite scalding but close. Steam rose around her. She took several deep breaths, hyperventilating to saturate her blood with oxygen. Then she slipped into the water. The heat shocked her system, but she pushed past it, treading water for a moment, letting her body adjust. Then she took one final deep breath and dove down. The water was clear near the surface, but grew darker as she descended. She kept her eyes open despite the mineral sting, using her hands to feel along the rough rock walls of the pool. 10 feet. Her ears popped from pressure. 11 feet. 12 feet. There. Her hand found it. An opening in the rock, maybe 3 feet in diameter. Water was flowing through it, pushed by the pressure of the spring's source deeper underground. She pulled herself into it. Tight fit. The rock scraped her shoulders. For one terrifying second, she thought she was stuck, that she'd miscalculated, that this was where she died. Then she was through, into a horizontal passage. She pulled herself forward, using handholds in the rock, fighting against the current of hot water flowing past her. 10 feet. 12 feet. Her lungs were starting to burn. 15 feet. Then the passage angled upward. She followed it, desperate now for air, her vision starting to gray at the edges. She broke the surface and gasped, sucking in air that tasted of minerals and ancient stone. She was in a cavern, dark but not completely. Somewhere above, a narrow crack in the rock allowed moonlight to filter through, creating a dim glow. Mira pulled herself onto a ledge, coughing, her whole body shaking. She'd made it. The cavern was real. She wished she'd brought a waterproof flashlight, but her eyes were adjusting to the low light. The cavern was maybe 30 feet across, 40 feet high. Water covered about half of it, fed by the spring that flowed through the passage she just swam through. And the walls. Mira stood, walking carefully across the slick rock. The walls of the cavern were covered in crystal formations. They jutted out in geometric shapes, hexagonal structures, some as small as her thumb, others as large as her forearm. They caught what little light there was and refracted it, creating pinpoints of color: red, orange, brown. Pie-night. This was pie-night. Mira reached out with trembling hands and touched one of the formations. It was real, solid. cold despite the warm air. Theodore hadn't lied. Tons of it. The entire cavern was lined with pinnite crystals, a geological impossibility, a fortune beyond calculation. She didn't know how long she stood there, just staring, her mind trying to process the magnitude of what she was seeing. Minutes maybe, or hours. Finally, practical concerns broke through the awe. She needed to get back. She needed to document this. She needed a sound, distant but unmistakable. Voices. Above her, in the building. Someone was in the bathhouse. Myra's heart kicked into panic. Sophia. Alone. Asleep. She dove back into the water, not bothering to regulate her breathing, just plunging into the passage and pulling herself through with desperate strength. The return trip felt longer, the current fighting her, but she pushed through, emerging in the steam room, gasping and shaking. She grabbed her clothes, pulling them on over her wet body, and ran from the steam room toward the main hall. 3 people stood there. One was shining a flashlight at Sophia, who was sitting up in her sleeping bag, eyes wide with fear. Mira recognized the man with the flashlight immediately. Richard Hartwell from Ridgefield Development. Get away from my daughter. Myra's voice came out low and dangerous. Hartwell turned, his flashlight beam hitting her face. Ms. Kostova, I was worried about you. Breaking into condemned buildings at night, very dangerous. The other 2 were men she didn't recognize. Large, intimidating, the kind hired for physical presence rather than conversation skills. This is my building. You're trespassing. Actually, I don't think it is. You see, I did some research after our conversation this morning. The sale hasn't been fully processed yet. There's a 3-day waiting period before title transfers. Until then, the building is still technically county property. Hartwell smiled. Which means you're the one trespassing. Myra's mind raced. Was he right? She'd signed papers at the auction, paid cash, received a receipt. But had the title actually transferred? What do you want? Same thing I offered this morning. I'll give you $3,000 to walk away. Sign over your claim, take the money, go start fresh somewhere else. He pulled out a folded document from his jacket. Contract's already drawn up. Just needs your signature. And if I don't, then I call the police. Have you arrested for trespassing. Child Services takes your daughter. By the time you sort it out, the 3-day period will have passed, and the building reverts to the county. I'll buy it properly, with lawyers and capital, and you'll get nothing. Sophia started crying softly. Mira moved to her daughter, positioning herself between Sophia and the 3 men. How did you know about the pinnite? The question came out before she could stop it. Hartwell's smile widened. So you found it. Good. That saves us the trouble of searching. Where's the access? Mira said nothing. It doesn't matter. We have geological surveys. We know it's under the building somewhere. We'll find it eventually. He held out the contract. $3,000. Right now. Final offer. Mama. Sophia's voice was small, terrified. Mira thought about everything that had led here. The eviction, the car, the auction, Theodore's letter, the steam messages. She thought about his words. If you take the crystals and leave, you will be rich, but you will have destroyed something irreplaceable. No, Ms. Kostova, be reasonable. I said no. This building belongs to me. The pinnite belongs to me. And you and your thugs need to leave. Now, one of the large men stepped forward. Mr. Hartwell, should we? A new voice cut through the tension. Police. Everyone freeze. 2 uniformed officers entered through the rear entrance, weapons drawn. Behind them, Vera Kovac stepped into view, her elderly face set in determined lines. Sheriff Davis called me when she saw suspicious vehicles at this location, Vera announced. I told her the owner was staying here overnight with permission. These 3, she pointed at Hartwell and his men, are trespassing. Hartwell's face went purple. This building is condemned. She has no right. She has a purchase receipt and is awaiting title transfer. That gives her squatter's rights at minimum. One of the officers, a woman in her 50s with sergeant stripes, stepped forward. You, on the other hand, broke into private property at 11 p.m. with 2 companions. That's criminal trespass. Hand behind your back. Do you know who I am? Ridgefield Development has lawyers. Then you can call them from the station. Turn around. 20 minutes later, Hartwell and his men were in handcuffs in the back of a police cruiser. Vera sat with Mira and Sophia in the main hall, a thermos of tea she'd brought from home being shared among them. "How did you know to come?" Mira asked. "I didn't. Sheriff Davis called me because she was doing a routine patrol and saw vehicles here. I vouch for you. Good timing, it seems." "Thank you. If you hadn't, don't thank me yet. That man has lawyers and money. He'll be out by morning, and he'll come at you with legal actions instead of thugs." Vera sipped her tea. What did he want? Mira pulled out Theodore's letter, handing it to Vera. The old woman read it slowly, her weathered fingers trembling slightly as she turned the page. When she finished, she looked up with tears in her eyes. "He never told anyone, not even his son. We all thought he was just a stubborn old man who refused to sell, even when the bathhouse was failing. He was protecting it. The building, the community, the memory. And now that protection passes to you." Vera folded the letter carefully and handed it back. "What will you do?" Mira looked at Sophia, asleep again despite the drama, exhausted. She looked at the building around them, crumbling, damaged, but full of history and hope. "I'm going to restore it. Properly. The way Theodore wanted. A bathhouse. A community space. Not a development project or a mining operation. That will take money you don't have. No, it will take money I do have once I figure out how to extract it legally and ethically." Vera smiled. "You're either the bravest or the stupidest person I've met in years." "I get that a lot." After Vera left, promising to return in the morning with breakfast, Mira lay in her sleeping bag next to Sophia. Her body was exhausted, but her mind was racing. She had pynite worth millions, but it was trapped at the bottom of a hot spring in a building she technically didn't own yet, targeted by a development company with resources she couldn't match. She had 3 days until the title transferred. 3 days until the historic preservation grant was reviewed. 3 days to figure out how to protect her claim and extract the crystals legally. Her phone buzzed. Text message from Peter Kovac. Good news. Grant committee agreed to emergency review. Meeting scheduled for 8 a.m. Thursday. They want to inspect the property. Be ready. Thursday. Tomorrow. If they approve the grant, she'd have funding to begin restoration. But first, she had to survive Hartwell's next move. She was about to put her phone away when another message came through. This one from an unknown number. "You have something that belongs to my client. We're prepared to offer $50,000 for immediate surrender of property claim and mineral rights. This is your final warning. Accept or face consequences." Mira stared at the message. $50,000. It was more money than she'd ever seen. It would change everything for her and Sophia. They could start over. Clean slate. Safety. She thought about Theodore's letter. About his choice to die poor rather than destroy something irreplaceable. About the immigrant community that had built this place with sacrifice and hope. She deleted the message. At midnight exactly, she returned to the steam room alone. Sophia was safe, sleeping deeply after the night's trauma. Mira sat cross-legged in front of the water, watching the steam rise. "Theodore, I found it. I found the pynite." The steam swirled, forming slowly. Good. Hartwell knows. He's coming for it. For the building. Expected. I don't know how to fight him. He has money, lawyers, power. I have nothing. The steam dispersed, then reformed. Not nothing. More words appeared. "You have truth. You have purpose. You have courage. Then, and you have me. You're a ghost. What can you do?" The steam seemed to laugh, forming. Watch. Then something strange happened. The water in the central pool began to glow. Not bright, but noticeable, a soft blue-green phosphorescence that seemed to come from deep within the spring. The steam intensified, pouring from the pool in thick billows, far more than normal. It filled the room, so thick Mira could barely see her own hands. And then, in the steam, she saw him. Not words this time, but an actual figure. An old man, translucent, made of vapor and moonlight, standing beside the pool. Theodore Kovac. He didn't speak, but he smiled. And he pointed, not at the pool but at the wall, at a section of tile that looked identical to all the others. Then the vision faded. The steam dispersed. The glow from the water dimmed until it was just a normal hot spring again. Mira approached the wall he'd indicated. She examined the tile closely. Nothing obvious. But when she pressed against one particular tile, it shifted slightly. She worked at it with her fingers, prying it loose. Behind it, a small cavity had been carved into the brick. Inside sat a wooden box, about the size of a cigar box, wrapped in oilcloth to protect it from moisture. Mira pulled it out carefully. Inside the box, she found three things. First, a collection of photographs. Theodore and his wife Clara. Theodore with workers building the bathhouse. Groups of immigrants, families, children playing in the pool. A community. Second, a leather journal, its pages filled with Theodore's handwriting. She flipped through it quickly. Construction notes, recipes for the bath treatments, anecdotes about customers, philosophical musings about community and belonging. Third, and most importantly, a folded piece of parchment paper. She opened it carefully. It was a legal document, dated 1923, signed by the Steinway Mining Company. A deed transfer, granting Theodore Kovac not just surface rights, but full mineral rights to the 1-acre plot where the bathhouse stood. Mineral rights, which meant any minerals found on the property, including pynite, belonged to the property owner. Mira's hand shook as she read the document. This was the proof she needed. This established that the pynite legally belonged to whoever owned the building. Hartwell couldn't claim it through mining rights. The only way to get it was to get the building. She carefully refolded the document and placed it back in the box with the photographs and journal. This was her evidence. This was her ammunition. She returned to the main hall where Sophia slept. She lay down in her sleeping bag, but couldn't sleep, her mind too busy planning. By 3 a.m., she'd formulated a strategy. By 4 a.m., she'd made a list of people she needed to contact. By 5 a.m., she'd written out a timeline of actions required. At 6 a.m., as dawn light started filtering through the dirty windows, Mira stood and began making calls. Thursday morning arrived with fog, thick and low-lying, turning Steinway Springs into something from a Gothic novel. Mira had been awake for 24 hours straight, running on adrenaline and terrible gas station coffee. But her mind was clear, sharp, focused. The Historic Preservation Grant Committee arrived at 8 a.m. sharp. For people, 2 from the State Historical Society, 1 structural engineer, and 1 representative from the State Preservation Office. Peter Kovac met them at the entrance, having arrived an hour earlier to prepare. He'd brought detailed documentation, historical records, structural assessments, photographs showing both the decay and the architectural significance. Mira had dressed Sophia in her cleanest clothes and instructed her to be polite but quiet. Sophia, sensing the importance, became unnaturally well-behaved, sitting in the corner with her coloring book while adults talked seriously about foundations and load-bearing walls. The committee spent 2 hours inspecting the building. They photographed everything. They took notes. They measured and tested and consulted in hushed voices. Finally, they gathered in the main hall. The lead committee member, a woman named Dr. Patricia Morrison, addressed Mira directly. Ms. Kostova, I'll be frank. This building is in worse shape than our initial assessment suggested. The roof needs immediate attention. The foundation has water intrusion issues. Several of the support columns show signs of stress. Mira's heart sank. This was the rejection speech. However, Dr. Morrison continued, it's also one of the finest examples of immigrant vernacular architecture I've seen. The craftsmanship is exceptional. The historical significance is undeniable. And frankly, places like this are disappearing. Once they're gone forever. She consulted with her colleagues briefly, then turned back to Mira. We're approving the emergency grant. $45,000. Released immediately, specifically for stabilization and critical safety repairs. That should be enough to satisfy the county's requirements and get you insurance. The rest of the restoration will be your responsibility. Mira felt her knees weaken. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank us yet. You're taking on a massive project. Most people who get these grants give up halfway through. The building wins by attrition. Dr. Morrison handed Mira a folder full of documents. Paperwork for the disbursement. Money should hit your account by tomorrow morning. Use it wisely. After the committee left, Peter grabbed Mira in an unexpected hug, lifting her off the ground. We did it. We actually did it. Sophia ran over, jumping up and down. Did we win, Mama? Did we win? We won this round, baby. But the celebration was short-lived. At 10 a.m., a process server appeared with legal documents. A civil complaint filed by Ridgefield Development Corporation, alleging that Mira's purchase of the property was fraudulent, claiming the county auction had been improperly administered, and seeking immediate injunction preventing any work on the building until the matter was resolved in court. Mira read the documents, her jaw tight. Hartwell was escalating. If the injunction was granted, she couldn't use the grant money to make repairs. The building would remain condemned. She'd default on the insurance requirement. Game over. She called the only lawyer she knew, Arthur Sterling, who'd helped her during the bankruptcy proceedings after her divorce. Sterling was semi-retired, doing occasional pro bono work, but he was sharp. They're filing a harassment suit disguised as a property claim, Sterling said after she read him the complaint over the phone. It's all smoke. They have no standing. But smoke can cloud things up for months, and months is what they want. They're trying to run out your clock. Can we fight it? We can. I'll file a motion to dismiss. But it'll take a week minimum to get a hearing. You're supposed to have insurance by when? Tomorrow. Friday at 5 p.m. Sterling cursed. That's cutting it impossibly tight. Even with the grant money, getting a policy in 24 hours for a condemned building. I'll figure it out. Mira spent the afternoon calling every insurance company in Pennsylvania. The conversation was always the same. I need to insure a condemned building. We don't insure condemned properties. I have grant money for immediate remediation. Call us back after the remediation is complete. I can't do remediation without insurance. Then we can't help you. Catch 22. The perfect trap. At 4 p.m., with her options exhausted, Mira sat on the front steps of the bathhouse and let herself feel despair. She comes so close. The grant, the pie night, the possibility of a real home for Sophia. All of it slipping away because of insurance paperwork and bureaucratic requirements. A vehicle pulled up. Vera's ancient pickup truck, paint faded to no particular color, engine coughing like a terminal patient. Vera got out, carrying a basket. Brought dinner. Figured you'd be too busy to cook. I don't have a kitchen, hence why I brought food already cooked. She set the basket down. What's wrong? You look like someone killed your dog. Mira explained about the insurance requirement, about every company saying no, about running out of time and options. Vera listened, her face thoughtful. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. Jimmy? It's Vera Kovac. Yes, I know it's been years. Listen, I need a favor. Big one. Remember when I didn't report your nephew for that thing at the warehouse? Good. Now you're going to write me an insurance policy. 10 minutes later, Vera hung up. Jimmy Chin owns a small insurance agency. He specializes in high-risk properties. He's agreed to write you a conditional policy. Covers basic liability while you're doing remediation work. It's expensive, but it satisfies the county requirement. How much? $12,000 a year. Myra's stomach dropped. That was more than a quarter of the grant money. But, Vera continued, he's willing to take installment payments. First payment due in 30 days. That gives you time to start repairs, show progress, get a better policy elsewhere. Why would he do this? Because I have something on his nephew, and he doesn't want me to use it. Also, because he's not a completely terrible person. Vera smiled. Small towns run on favors and leverage. Welcome to Steinway Springs politics. By Friday at noon, Mira had the insurance policy. By 2 p.m., she'd submitted it to County Health Inspector Linda Torres. By 4 p.m., Torres had approved it and lifted the immediate seizure threat. Mira walked back in the bathhouse at 4:30 p.m., found Sophia playing with pebbles she'd arranged into elaborate patterns on the floor, and collapsed next to her daughter. We're okay, baby. We get to stay. I like staying here, Mama. The building talks to me sometimes. Myra's exhaustion evaporated. What? In my dreams. The building talks. It says it's happy we're here. It says it was lonely. Mira pulled her daughter close. kissing the top of her head. Sophia was 6. Kids had active imaginations. But in a building where steam formed words and dead men pointed toward hidden documents, who was Mira to say what was real and what wasn't? That night, after Sophia fell asleep, Mira returned to the steam room one final time. Theodore, I need your help with something. The pynite. I need to extract it without destroying the springs, without harming the building. Is that possible? The steam swirled for a long moment, then formed. Tomorrow. Midnight. Bring trust. And then, unusually, the steam formed something that looked like a map. Crude, simple but clear. A tunnel. A chamber. A path. Mira grabbed her phone and photographed the steam formation before it dispersed. Tomorrow, Saturday. Midnight. She'd enter the crystal cavern again, and somehow, Theodore would show her how to claim her fortune without destroying his legacy. She just had to survive until then. Saturday arrived with rain, cold and persistent, the kind that found every crack in a building and exploited it. Mira spent the day with Peter and a small crew of volunteers he'd assembled. Local contractors between jobs, retired tradesmen who remembered the bathhouse's glory days, people who cared more about legacy than profit. They started with the roof. Peter had used part of the grant money to purchase tarps, industrial-grade sealant, and emergency patching materials. The work was brutal, dangerous, climbing on rain-slick tiles 3 stories up while wind tried to knock them off. Mira worked alongside them, her hands raw and bleeding by noon, her clothes soaked through. Sophia stayed inside with Vera, who'd arrived with more food and had taken on the role of unofficial grandmother, teaching the girl card games and telling stories about old Steinway Springs. By 4 p.m., they'd patched the worst of the roof damage. Water was no longer actively pouring into the building. It wasn't beautiful, but it was functional. By 7 p.m., they'd reinforced 3 support columns that had been showing stress fractures, using steel braces and concrete fill. The building was stabilizing. By 9 p.m., the volunteers headed home, exhausted but satisfied. Peter stayed, helping Mira clean up tools, his face showing both pride and concern. You know, this is just the beginning, right? We've bought you time, but the real restoration work will take months. Maybe years. I know, and you still can't live here legally. The building still doesn't have proper utilities, proper safety systems. I know that too. Peter studied her. What's your endgame here, Mira? Even with the grant money, even with volunteer labor, you're looking at burning through capital for a building that won't generate income for at least a year. Mira looked around the main hall, at the ancient tiles, at the pool that had once held families, at the windows that had let in light for people seeking healing. She thought about the pynite hidden below, about Theodore's test, about the choice between taking wealth and running or building something lasting. My end game is that 6 months from now, this building will be operational again. A real bathhouse, thermal pools, steam rooms, the whole thing. A community space like Theodore intended. That's a beautiful dream. But dreams don't pay contractors. They will once I figure out how to monetize the minerals without destroying the springs. Peter's eyebrows rose. You found something down there? Something valuable. Maybe. I'll know more tonight. After Peter left, Mira fed Sophia, got her ready for bed, and sat with her until she fell asleep. Then she changed into her swimsuit, grabbed a waterproof flashlight she'd bought that afternoon, and prepared for the dive. 11:45 p.m., 15 minutes until midnight. She entered the steam room. The water was already churning more than usual, the steam rising in thick columns that seemed almost solid. The temperature had risen too. She could feel the heat from several feet away. At exactly midnight, the water began to glow again. That same blue-green phosphorescence, but brighter this time, illuminating the entire room. The steam formed words. Ready? As I'll ever be. Dive. Follow light. Trust. Mira took 3 deep breaths, hyperventilating, then dove. The water was clearer than before, and the phosphorescence created enough light to see. She swam down to the opening in a rock, pulled herself through into the passage. But this time, something was different. The passage glowed. Not the water itself, but the rock walls. They emitted that same blue-green light, creating a luminous tunnel. She followed it, pulling herself through, and emerged in the crystal cavern. The entire space was glowing. The pynite crystals were phosphorescent, and whatever geothermal process was active tonight had triggered their natural luminescence. The cavern looked like something from a fantasy film. Walls covered in glowing geometric formations, water reflecting the light in dancing patterns, the air itself seeming to shimmer. Mira pulled herself onto the ledge, breathless. She'd thought she understood the beauty of this place, but she'd only seen it in darkness. This was revelation. The steam in the cavern began to swirl, forming that familiar, translucent figure. Theodore, more solid-looking than before, standing beside the largest crystal formation. He didn't speak, but he gestured, pointing at specific crystals. Mira approached carefully. The crystals he indicated were different from the others, smaller, already partially separated from the main formations. Some had natural fractures running through them. Others sat in loose pockets where the stone had eroded. She understood. These could be removed without damaging the cavern. They were already coming loose naturally, geological time slowly pulling them free. There were dozens of them, some as small as her thumb, others the size of her fist. She could harvest these without explosives, without mining equipment, without destruction. Just careful extraction of what was already being released. Theodore's ghost smiled. Then he pointed again, this time at a narrow crack in the cavern wall, almost invisible. He gestured for her to look through it. Mira approached, shining her flashlight into the crack. Behind it, another chamber, smaller, but the walls were entirely covered in crystals, and at the base, piled like treasure from a fairy tale, were specimens that had already fallen, already been separated by natural processes. Years' worth of naturally detached pynite, just sitting there, waiting. She looked back at Theodore. This is your gift. This is what you meant. He nodded, then formed words in the steam. Take only what falls. Never cut. Never blast. Respect. I understand. I won't harm this place. I promise. Good. Then one more thing. The ghost moved to the far end of the cavern, to an area Mira hadn't explored. He pointed down at what looked like solid rock. She approached, knelt, examined it closely. Not solid. A stone slab, carved with symbols, covering something beneath. She worked her fingers under the edge and lifted. The slab was heavy but movable. Under it, a waterproof metal box, the kind used for important documents in the 1960s. She opened it. Inside, another letter in Theodore's handwriting, and beneath that, a stack of legal documents, and beneath those, old black and white photographs. The letter was dated 1964, written shortly before his death. If you have found this, you have proven yourself worthy. You dove into darkness, trusting I would guide you. That takes more courage than taking crystals and running. The documents below are the original mineral surveys from 1924. They prove the pynite deposit's existence and value. Take them to any reputable gemologist. They will confirm what I've known for 40 years. The photographs are of everyone who helped build this bathhouse. Immigrants who pooled their wages. Families who donated labor. Children who carried bricks. This place was never mine alone. It was ours. Now it is yours. And whoever comes after you. And whoever comes after them. Build something that lasts. Build something that serves. Build something that remembers. With hope, Theodore. Mira carefully removed the documents and photographs, sealing them in the waterproof container she'd brought. Then she began the careful work of collecting the loose pynite specimens. She worked for 2 hours, moving between the main cavern and the hidden chamber, selecting only crystals that were already detached or held on by the bear's connection. She was methodical, respectful, taking her time. By 2:30 a.m., she had filled her waterproof bag with perhaps 40 specimens, ranging from grape-sized to grapefruit-sized. She had no idea of their exact value, but based on her research, even conservative estimates put natural pynite at $60,000 per carat. Some of these specimens were hundreds of carats. She was holding millions of dollars in rare minerals, maybe tens of millions. Theodore's ghost watched her work, nodding approval. When she finished, when she'd sealed the bag and prepared to leave, he formed one final message. Thank you for remembering, for building. for believing. Then he faded, the phosphorescence dimmed, and Mira was alone in the darkness with only her flashlight. She made the return swim, pulling the heavy waterproof bag through the underwater passage, emerging in the steam room, gasping and exhausted. She climbed out, dried off, changed back into her clothes, and carried the bag to the main hall, where Sophia slept. She hid the bag behind a loose section of baseboard, covering it with debris so it looked like just more building decay. Then she crawled into her sleeping bag and slept for 4 hours, the deepest sleep she'd had in months. Sunday morning, Mira woke to shouting outside. She bolted upright, instantly alert. Sophia was already awake, pressed against the wall, eyes wide. "Mama, the bad man is back." Mira moved to the window. A crowd had gathered on Gorman Street. Maybe 30 people. Richard Hartwell stood on the front steps of the bathhouse, holding a megaphone, addressing the crowd. His store building is being destroyed by an incompetent squatter who has no understanding of proper restoration. She's taken grant money meant for professionals and is using untrained workers to botch critical repairs. Mira saw news cameras. Local news, judging by the van's logo. Hartwell had called the press. She grabbed Sophia's hand. "Stay behind me." They went outside through the rear entrance, circling around to the front. The crowd was a mix of curious locals and what looked like Hartwell's people, professional protesters maybe, or paid supporters. Hartwell spotted her, and his smile widened. "And here she is now. Ms. Kostova, would you care to explain to these good people why you're destroying a historic building?" Mira stepped forward, and several people in the crowd recognized her from around town. She saw faces from the soup kitchen, from the grocery store, from the library. "I'm not destroying anything. I'm saving it." "Saving it?" Hartwell laughed into the megaphone. "You have no experience in historic restoration. You're living illegally in a condemned structure with a child. You're a menace to public safety. I have a legal title to this property. I have an approved grant for restoration. I have proper insurance. Everything I'm doing is legal and documented." A reporter pushed forward, microphone extended. "Ms. Kostova, Mr. Hartwell claims you're hiding something inside the building, that you've discovered something valuable and are keeping it from the public. Would you care to comment?" Myra's heart kicked. How much did Hartwell know? "The only thing I'm hiding is my 6-year-old daughter from angry men with megaphones." The reporter's expression softened. Several people in the crowd laughed. Hartwell's face reddened. "This is not a joke. Ridgefield Development has a legitimate interest in this property. We have the capital and expertise to properly restore it. Ms. Kostova is standing in the way of progress." "Progress toward what?" A new voice, sharp and elderly. Vera pushed through the crowd, followed by Peter and his crew of volunteers. "Progress toward tearing down the last piece of immigrant history in this town. Progress toward another empty lot or expensive condos nobody can afford." Other people were arriving now. Sheriff Davis in her patrol car. Dr. Morrison from the Historic Preservation Committee. More locals, drawn by the commotion. Hartwell tried to maintain control. "The community deserves transparency. Ms. Kostova, show us what you're hiding. Open the building. Let an independent inspector verify." "No." Myra's voice cut through his amplified shouting. "This is private property. You have no right to enter. You have no standing to demand anything. And you're trespassing on my front steps." Sheriff Davis stepped forward. "She's right. Mr. Hartwell, I'm going to need you to step down and disperse this crowd. You don't have a permit for a public assembly. This is public property. It's private property with public easement for the sidewalk. You're on her steps. That's trespassing. Move, or I'll arrest you for the 2nd time this week." Hartwell's lawyer, who'd been standing nearby, whispered something urgent in his ear. Hartwell's expression went through several changes: anger, calculation, forced calm. He lowered the megaphone and addressed the crowd without amplification. "Mark my words, this woman is hiding something. When the truth comes out, when her scheme collapses, don't say I didn't warn you." He left, his supporters following, the crowd dispersing like smoke. The reporter approached Mira more carefully now. "Ms. Kostova, can I ask what your plans are for the building?" Mr. Hartwell mentioned mineral deposits. "Is there any truth to—" I'm restoring the bathhouse to its original purpose. A community space, thermal pools, steam rooms, the services that made this place important for 40 years. And the funding? Combination of grant money and private resources. Not a lie, technically. The Pionite was a private resource. The reporter made notes, then looked up. This is a great human interest story. Single mom saving historic building. Can we do a follow-up piece? Maybe interview your daughter. Get some photos of the restoration work? Mira hesitated. Publicity could help or hurt. But Hartwell had already made this public. Maybe controlling the narrative was the better strategy. Give me your contact information. I'll think about it. After the crowd dispersed, Vera, Peter, and Sheriff Davis stayed. They stood in the main hall, the four of them, while Sophia played nearby, oblivious to the tension. He's going to escalate, Davis said. That show was a warning shot. He's trying to turn public opinion against you. Why does he want this building so badly? Peter asked. Even with historical value, it's a money pit. Development doesn't make sense here. Mira made a decision. These people had helped her, had believed in her, had put their own time and reputations on the line. They deserve the truth. Because there's Pionite under the building. A cavern full of it. Worth millions. Maybe tens of millions. The silence that followed was profound. Vera sat down heavily on one of the rotting benches. Peter's face went through shock, understanding, and something like awe. Davis just nodded, like this confirmed something she'd suspected. How much Pionite? Peter finally asked. Tons. An entire cavern lined with crystals. I have samples. She retrieved the waterproof bag from its hiding place and opened it. The Pionite caught the light streaming through the windows, refracting it into geometric patterns. Red, orange, brown. The crystals seemed to glow with internal fire. Vera reached out with shaking hands, touching one of the specimens. Theodore knew. All those years, he knew. And he never took it, never sold it. Just kept running the bathhouse. He was protecting it, waiting for the right person. Mira pulled out Theodore's letters, the photographs, the mineral surveys. He left instructions. Take only what falls naturally. Never cut, never blast, never destroy. Use the wealth to restore the building, serve the community. And you got to do that. Davis's voice carried no judgment, just curiosity. You could take these samples, sell them, disappear. Start over somewhere else with more money than you've ever imagined. I could, but then I'd be destroying what Theodore built. And I'd be teaching my daughter that when things get hard, you run. Mira looked at Sophia, coloring peacefully. She's been living in a car. She's been hungry. She's been scared. She deserves better. But better doesn't mean just money. It means roots. It means community. It means building something that lasts. Vera was crying now, tears running down her weathered face. He would have loved you. Theodore would have loved you. Peter held one of the smaller specimens up to the light, examining it with an engineer's eye. We need to get these authenticated, properly documented. If Hartwell gets wind of what you actually have here, he'll come at you with everything. I know. That's next on my list. There's a gemologist in Pittsburgh, Davis said. Dr. Sarah Chun, former FBI consultant, specializes in rare minerals for insurance and authentication. She's expensive, but completely trustworthy. If anyone can properly document and value these samples without word leaking, it's her. Mira pulled out her phone and made note of the name. Thank you. All of you. I couldn't do this alone. You're not alone. Vera stood, wiping her eyes. This is Steinway Springs. We take care of our own. And like it or not, you're one of ours now. Monday morning, Mira drove to Pittsburgh, leaving Sophia in Vera's care. The drive took 2 hours, the Pionite samples secured in the waterproof bag in her trunk, her heart hammering the entire way. What if she was wrong? What if the samples weren't actually valuable? What if this was all some elaborate delusion, and she was about to look like an idiot in front of an expert? Dr. Sarachin's office was in a nondescript building in Pittsburgh's Strip District, wedged between a Vietnamese restaurant and a used bookstore. The office itself was minimalist. White walls, professional lighting, examination tables covered in velvet, high-end microscopes, and spectrographic equipment. Dr. Chun was 60-something, Chinese-American, with gray-streaked hair, pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes that looked like they'd seen every scam and fake in the business. Sheriff Davis called ahead. Said, "You have pynite samples that need authentication." Her voice carried polite skepticism. "I'll be direct. I see a lot of people who think they've found rare minerals. Usually it's glass, or quartz, or industrial synthetic. Real natural pynite is extraordinarily rare. I understand. Do you have any documentation? Geological surveys, provenance, anything establishing where these samples originated?" Mira placed Theodore's folder on the examination table. The original 1924 mineral surveys, the photographs, the letters. The property owner discovered the deposit in 1925 and kept it secret for 40 years. These are his original documents. Dr. Chen's skepticism evaporated as she read through the surveys. Her hands started trembling slightly. These are contemporary to the original pynite discovery in Myanmar. If these surveys are authentic, they are. I can provide property records, historic documentation, everything you need. Dr. Chun carefully set aside the papers and pulled on white cotton gloves. "Show me the samples." Mira opened the waterproof bag. The crystals tumbled onto the velvet examination surface, and Dr. Chin made a sound like she'd been punched. "My God!" She picked up the smallest specimen, barely larger than a walnut, and placed it under the microscope. She examined it for 5 silent minutes, adjusting magnification, testing with various lights, making notes. Then she pulled out a spectrometer, running tests that meant nothing to Mira, but clearly meant everything to Dr. Chun. After 30 minutes, the gemologist sat back, removing her gloves with shaking hands. "Ms. Kostova, these are natural pynite specimens. Museum quality. The largest ones," she gestured at specimens the size of grapefruits, "are potentially the largest natural pynite crystals ever discovered. What are they worth?" Dr. Chin laughed, a sound edged with hysteria. "That's like asking what the Mona Lisa is worth. They're priceless, scientifically invaluable. But if I had to put a market value..." She pulled out a calculator, tapping numbers. "Conservative estimate, selling to museums and serious collectors. You're looking at $60 to $80 million. Possibly more at auction." The number hit Mira like a physical blow. She sat down hard on one of the office chairs. "And that's just these 40 specimens," Dr. Chun continued. "If you have access to more, if there's truly a cavern full of pynite, as these surveys suggest, you're potentially sitting on the largest pynite deposit in the world. Could be worth $500 million. Maybe more." Mira couldn't speak. Her mind couldn't process numbers that large. However, Dr. Chin's tone became serious. "Extracting it will be complicated. Pynite is extremely hard but also brittle. It fractures easily if you don't know what you're doing. You'll need geological experts, mining engineers, environmental impact studies." And she paused. "You'll need security. Once word gets out that you have this, every treasure hunter and criminal enterprise in North America will come looking. What should I do? First, let me formally authenticate and document these specimens. I'll photograph them, create detailed reports, test, and verify each one. That protects you legally, proves you discovered them, establishes provenance, creates a paper trail. How long will that take? For 40 specimens? 3 days minimum. I'll work around the clock. She looked at the crystals with something like reverence. This is a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. This changes gemological understanding of pynite formation. Can you keep it quiet until you're ready to go public? Yes. But understand, once this is authenticated, once you start selling specimens, it will make international news. There's no way to keep something like this secret permanently." Mira thought about Hartwell, about his megaphone and his threats, about his resources and lawyers. She thought about Sophia, about keeping her safe, about building something that couldn't be taken away. Do the authentication. Document everything. And Dr. Chun, when this does go public, I need you to help me find buyers. Museums, universities, serious collectors. People who will value these specimens for their scientific importance, not just their price tag. Dr. Chin smiled. "I know exactly who to contact. And Ms. Kostova, thank you for bringing these to someone who will appreciate them properly. A lesser person would have taken these to a jewelry liquidator and let them be cut into anonymous gemstones. What you're doing, preserving them as specimens, documenting them scientifically, that's how it should be done. Mira left the office feeling lightheaded, unreal, like she was living someone else's life. She sat in her car for 10 minutes, just breathing, trying to process. $60 to $80 million from 40 specimens, and there were hundreds more in the cavern, possibly thousands. She bought a building for $500 and found enough wealth to change her life, Sophia's life, maybe the entire town's life. But first, she had to protect it. She called Sterling. I need you to file paperwork. Legal protections. The building contains valuable mineral deposits. I need to establish legal ownership, mineral rights, everything. How valuable are we talking? 9 figures, potentially. Sterling was quiet for a long moment. I'm going to need you to repeat that. Potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I have samples being authenticated now by an expert in Pittsburgh. This is real, Arthur. This is going to change everything. Then we need to act fast. I'll file mineral rights claims today. And Mira? Hire security. Immediately. If word of this leaks before you have legal protections in place, things could get very dangerous very quickly. Mira drove back to Steinway Springs, her mind racing through logistics. Security, legal protection, authentication, selling strategy, restoration plans. It was overwhelming. But underneath the anxiety, underneath the fear, she felt something else. Hope. Real, tangible hope. She pulled into Gorman Street. At 3 p.m. Vera's truck was parked outside the bathhouse. But so were 3 other vehicles she didn't recognize. And, standing on the front steps, her stomach dropped. Hartwell, with 2 men in business suits and a woman carrying a briefcase. And behind them, Sheriff Davis, looking serious. Mira parked and got out slowly. What's going on? Hartwell smiled. Ms. Kostova, these gentlemen are from the EPA. They're here to conduct an emergency inspection of the hot spring system. There's been a report of potentially hazardous geothermal activity that could pose a danger to public health. One of the EPA officials stepped forward. Ma'am, we need access to the property. If you refuse, we'll obtain a warrant. Based on what report? An anonymous tip about contaminated water and unsafe mineral deposits. We take these reports seriously. Mira looked at Hartwell. He was still smiling. He'd found another angle, another way to force access to the building to get eyes on the pynite. The building is structurally unstable. It's not safe for. We're trained for hazardous site inspections. We'll assume the risk. The official's tone was polite but firm. We're coming in either way. You can make this easy or difficult. Mira glanced at Davis, who gave a tiny shake of her head. Fighting this would look suspicious, would make them more determined. Fine, but my daughter stays with Vera, and I'm coming with you. Every step. Agreed. She went inside, found Sophia with Vera in the main hall, pulled her daughter aside. Baby, I need you to stay with Miss Vera for a while. Some people need to look at the building. The bad man. Some of his people. But Mama will be right here. You'll be safe with Miss Vera. Vera took Sophia's hand. Come on, sweetheart. Let's go get ice cream and let the boring adults do their boring adult things. After they left, Mira led the EPA officials through the building. They tested water quality, took samples from the main bath, examined the second-floor treatment rooms with methodical thoroughness. Then one of them said, "We need to see the spring source. Where does the hot water originate?" "The steam room. Second floor." They climbed the stairs, Hartwell following, his eyes bright with anticipation. They entered the steam room and immediately began testing the water in the central pool. This is the primary spring? Yes. How deep is it? I don't know exactly. At least 12 feet. One of the officials pulled out a depth gauge and lowered it into the water. 14 feet. And there's a current. This is fed by a substantial underground source. Hartwell stepped forward. According to geological surveys, there should be a cave system beneath this pool. Have you explored it? It's underwater. I can't breathe underwater. But you have been in the pool. Trap question. If she said no, she was lying. If she said yes, they want to know what she saw. I've tested the water temperature. That's all. The EPA official made notes. We'll need to send a dive team down to assess the geothermal system. Make sure there are no toxic gas pockets, no contamination risks. When? Tomorrow, likely. We'll need to secure equipment. Hartwell's smile widened. Tomorrow, his people would be diving into the spring, would find the passage, would discover the Pine Cavern. Unless Mira could stop them. After the EPA officials left, after Hartwell departed with one last triumphant look, Mira stood alone in the steam room. Theodore, I need help. They're coming tomorrow. They're going to find the cavern. The steam swirled, forming words. Nature protects itself. What does that mean? Trust the springs. Trust the building. Trust yourself. The steam dissipated, leaving Mira alone with cryptic advice and less than 24 hours to figure out what it meant. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. She lay in her sleeping bag, mind racing through scenarios, all of them ending badly. At 2 a.m., she heard sounds. Not from inside the building, from beneath it. Deep rumbling, like distant thunder, but continuous. She stood, grabbed her flashlight, and went to the steam room. The water in the pool was churning violently, far more than normal. Steam poured from it in thick clouds. The temperature had spiked. She could feel the heat from the doorway. And the color of the water was changing. What had been clear was now milky, opaque, filled with suspended minerals. The geothermal system was acting up. Or, nature protects itself. Theodore hadn't been speaking metaphorically. The springs themselves were responding, changing conditions, making the dive impossible. By morning, the transformation was complete. The pool water was completely opaque, a milky blue-white color, hot enough to be dangerous, churning with currents that would make diving suicidal. When the EPA officials arrived at 9 a.m. with their dive team, they took one look at the pool and shook their heads. Can't dive in these conditions. Zero visibility, water temperature is dangerously high, currents are unpredictable. The dive team leader checked his instruments. These springs are acting up. Could be a seismic event, could be natural cycle. Either way, we're not sending anyone down until conditions stabilize. Hartwell's face went purple. When will that be? Could be days. Could be weeks. Hot springs are unpredictable. Then drain it. Pump the water out. The EPA official looked at him like he was insane. Sir, you can't drain a natural hot spring. It's fed by underground geothermal activity. It would just refill, and disturbing it further could trigger a genuine hazard. But the survey will have to wait. This site is temporarily off limits for invasive inspection. We'll monitor it, but that's all we can do safely. After they left, Hartwell cornered Mira in the hallway. His polite mask was completely gone now, replaced by raw anger. You did something. You contaminated the water somehow, made it impossible to dive. I didn't do anything. The springs are natural. They do what they want. I know what's down there. I know about the pinite. And I know you've already taken samples. That's theft of mineral resources. Mineral rights belong to the property owner. I have documentation proving that. Any samples I've taken are legally mine. We'll see what a court says about that. This isn't over. No, it's not. He left, and Mira returned to the steam room. She knelt beside the churning pool. Thank you, Theodore. Thank you. The steam formed slowly, bought you time. Use it wisely. I will. 3 days later, Dr. Chen called. Authentication is complete. I have full documentation for all 40 specimens. And I have buyers. Already. Are you kidding? I've had museums and universities calling me every hour since I discreetly mentioned I was working on natural pinite specimens. The Smithsonian wants 3. The American Museum of Natural History wants 5. A private collector in Dubai is offering $12 million for the largest specimen alone. Myra's head spun. What do I do? Prioritize institutions over private collectors. Museums will display these, study them, share them with the world. That's the right legacy. I've drafted a proposed sales schedule. Spread over 6 months, maximize value, minimize market flooding. How much total? Based on committed buyers and current offers? $72 million. And that's just the initial 40 specimens. Mira sat down hard. $72 million. It wasn't real. It couldn't be real. There's more, Dr. Chin continued. National Geographic wants to do a feature. They want to photograph the cavern, document the geological formation, interview you about the discovery. This will be one of the most significant mineralogical finds of the decade. Will that bring trouble? It will bring attention. Whether that's trouble depends on how you manage it. Mira thought about Hartwell, about security, about Sophia. What if I donate specimens to museums? Tax deductible, builds goodwill, protects the scientific value. Smart. Very smart. Donate to major institutions. Smithsonian, American Museum, British Museum. Keep the private sales small and selective. You'll make less money, but you'll build an unassailable reputation. Do it. Draft the agreements. Over the next week, things moved with impossible speed. Dr. Chen coordinated sales and donations. Sterling filed legal protections and mineral rights claims. Peter accelerated restoration work using an advance payment from the first specimen sale. Mira opened a bank account and watched numbers appear that didn't seem real. 1 million, 5 million, 10 million. She paid off Vera's mortgage as thanks for her help. Vera cried and tried to refuse, but Mira insisted. You gave me a chance when I had nothing. Let me give you security. She gave Peter $200,000 to properly equip his engineering firm and hire staff. I need a business partner who understands historic restoration. Interested? Peter laughed, overwhelmed. You're insane. But yes. She hired security, a professional firm that specialized in protecting valuable assets. Guards worked in shifts, monitoring the building 24/7. She contacted the mayor and proposed a plan. She would fund the restoration of 3 other historic buildings in Steinway Springs, would establish a community center, would bring jobs and economic development to the dying town. In exchange, the city would fast-track her permits and support the bathhouse restoration. The mayor agreed, so fast Mira wondered if he'd injured himself in his enthusiasm. 2 weeks after Dr. Chen's authentication, National Geographic arrived with cameras and journalists and geologists. They dove into the now-clear spring water. The opacity had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. Documented the crystal cavern, photographed formations, conducted interviews. The resulting article would appear 3 months later, titled The Last Secret of the Immigrant Bathhouse, How One Woman Discovered the World's Largest Pienite Deposit. It made international news. Within 24 hours of publication, Mira received interview requests from every major news outlet, book deal offers from publishers, even a Netflix documentary proposal. Hartwell sued, claiming fraud, claiming theft of mineral rights, claiming everything his lawyers could think of. Every suit was dismissed. Mira's documentation was airtight, her legal position unassailable. Ridgefield Development Corporation quietly withdrew from Steinway Springs. Hartwell himself disappeared from public view, his reputation destroyed, his company facing multiple investigations into harassment and attempted fraud. 6 months after buying the bathhouse for $500, Mira stood in the fully restored main hall. The pool was filled with clear thermal water, steam rising gently. The windows had been replaced, letting in autumn sunlight that painted the hexagonal tiles in geometric patterns. The changing rooms were rebuilt, new curtains hanging from polished brass rods. The walls held photographs, Theodore and his workers building the place, immigrants' families enjoying the pools, children playing in the steam rooms. History preserved, honored, remembered. A plaque beside the entrance read, Mineral Springs Bath House, established 1924, restored 2024, built by immigrants, for the community in memory of Theodore Kovac, who believed in building things that last. Sophia ran through the main hall in her swimsuit, splashing in the shallow end of the pool, laughing. She put on weight, healthy weight. Her cheeks were full, her energy boundless. She had friends now, local kids who came to the bathhouse after school. The steam room was open to the public again, the springs flowing freely. On certain nights, at exactly midnight, the water still glowed with that blue-green phosphorescence. Some people claimed they saw shapes in the steam, words forming and dispersing. Others said it was just minerals and light. Mira knew better. She'd kept her promise to Theodore. The The building lived again. The community had a gathering place. The wealth from the pynite was being used to restore, to build, to serve. She'd established the Kovac Foundation, dedicated to preserving immigrant heritage and supporting historic restoration across Pennsylvania. Millions of dollars in funding, protecting buildings that might otherwise be lost. She'd renovated the third floor of the bathhouse into an apartment. A real home with proper rooms, a kitchen, running water, heat. Sophia had her own bedroom, painted yellow, filled with books and toys, and all the things a 6-year-old should have. The Honda Civic sat in a parking spot behind the building, kept as a reminder. Some nights, when Mira couldn't sleep, she went out and sat in it, remembering what it felt like to have nothing, to be desperate, to make decisions that were either brave or stupid, depending on how they turned out. Peter's engineering firm occupied the restored second floor, employing 12 people from Steinway Springs. They specialized in historic restoration, working on projects across the state, building a reputation for quality and respect for heritage. Vera ran the bathhouse's daily operations, greeting customers, managing staff, telling stories about Theodore to anyone who would listen. The pynite sales continued, carefully managed, specimens going to museums and universities and serious collectors who valued them for their beauty and rarity rather than just their price. The money kept coming, more than Mira could spend in 10 lifetimes. She invested it in index funds, in real estate, in businesses that employed local people. She paid taxes that funded schools and roads. She donated to causes that helped people like she'd been, desperate, broken, one bad decision away from the street. One evening, after the bathhouse closed, Mira went to the steam room alone. She sat beside the pool, watching vapor rise in the dim light. Theodore, I hope I'm doing this right. I hope this is what you wanted. The steam swirled, forming familiar words. You understand now. Understand what? Wealth is not the treasure. Community is. Memory is. Building is. You built well. More words formed. Time for me to rest. My watch is over. Thank you for finishing what I started. The steam dispersed one final time. The water's phosphorescence faded. The air became just air again, warm and mineral-scented, but ordinary. Mira sat for a long time in the quiet, feeling the presence that had guided her slowly fade away. Theodore was finally resting. His work was done. Someone had finished what he'd started, had chosen correctly, had built something that would outlast them both. Sophia appeared in the doorway. Mama, can we have dinner now? I'm hungry. Mira stood, smiling. Yeah, baby. Let's go home. Home. A real word now, with real meaning. Not a car. Not a parking lot. Not a desperate gamble on a condemned building. Home was 3 floors of restored history. Home was a community that had accepted them. Home was knowing tomorrow would come, and they'd be okay. They walked through the bathhouse, Mira turning off lights, Sophia chattering about her day at school, planning what she wanted for dinner. Normal things. Beautiful, ordinary, normal things. In the main hall, Mira paused to look at Theodore's photograph. The old man smiled back, frozen in 1960s Kodachrome, holding a towel, standing beside his beloved pool. Thank you, she whispered. For the test. For the trust. For believing I'd choose right. She turned off the final light and locked the door behind them. Above the building, autumn stars emerged in a Pennsylvania sky. The springs bubbled quietly below, heating water that had been flowing since before humans built cities, before anyone thought to trap steam in rooms and call it healing. The building stood solid, brick and mortar and memory, a testament to immigrants who believed in hot water and fellowship, to an old man who'd chosen community over wealth, to a desperate woman who'd gambled her last dollars on a condemned building and found not just treasure, but purpose. Steinway Springs would survive another generation. The bathhouse would serve another 40 years, maybe more. And somewhere in the springs beneath, pynite crystals continued forming, one atomic layer at a time, building treasure that wouldn't be needed or touched, existing simply as proof that valuable things could be protected, preserved, honored. Not everything had to be taken. Not everything had to be sold. Sometimes the greatest wealth was knowing when to leave things whole. Mira and Sophia climbed the stairs to their apartment, to dinner, to homework, to bedtime stories, to all the rhythms of a life that had found its footing. The last light in the bathhouse window went dark, and the building dreamed quiet dreams of hot water and community and people who'd chosen to build instead of take. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.